We're going to keep moving on with the program. I'm going to introduce our main speaker tonight, and I'm so thrilled and happy to have him here with us. You know, every year since we started inviting Mount Carmel greats back, I'm always a little reluctant to call these guys, you know, because they have their own lives. A lot of them have been gone for a lot of years. They're doing their thing, and as in Louis' case, he's in Atlanta. And it's a little bit difficult to pick up the phone and say, hey, Lou, can you fly home to Mount Carmel to speak at our banquet for 10 minutes or whatever? And I'm always a little reluctant to do it, but then when I get them on a phone, it's never any different. They're all thrilled to be asked. They're thrilled to come back home and share their lives, their experiences with you guys, so that you can go ahead and do the same things. And that's been my whole idea all along, for you guys to sit out there and see somebody who sat there just like you and be the places that they've been. So that's the whole idea behind it, and I think Lou fits the bill perfectly. I won't take a lot of time away from Lou because everything about him is written in the book, but I will just touch on some of the highlights. He played on the 72-73 championship teams, 24-0. He was a prep All-American in addition to being first team All-State. There was even one magazine, if you read in there, that talked about Lou being the first running back in the country to bench 400 pounds. And Lou did that only to be bested by his little baby brother a couple years later, who went 410. So, but then they all learned it from their dad, Tom, who I don't know if Lou's going to touch on, and I don't want to take away from Lou, but Tom was our shot put record holder. It was then broken by Uncle Dan Ficca, and it was then broken by Lou Cole, and it was then broken by Tom Cole. So the Cole-Ficca family held a shot put record from 1945 up until, I would say, 1992, when Mike Fantanarosa finally broke it. But that's quite a stint, and that's quite an accomplishment for a family. But Lou took his talents on to Brown University, because obviously he was smart enough. And when Lou gets there, the second year that he's there, 76, it was his junior year, right, Louis? Yep. They won the first ever Ivy League championship for Brown. And he was all Ivy, obviously, and they should have won the senior year. Maybe he'll tell you a little story about that. But after that, he was drafted by the Dallas Cowboys in a supplemental draft. He had an opportunity for a Rhodes Scholarship, which is in England, right? Yep. But he chose to go to medical school. And obviously, it paid off for him. He went to Brown Medical School, graduated, did his residencies all over the place, and ended up doing a lot of work for public health. Giving back, once again, like something that I would expect from a Mount Carmel graduate, and ending up with his own practice now in Atlanta. But we're real happy, and I'm especially happy to have Lou Cole with us today. I'm sorry, Lou, I should say Dr. Lou Cole. But ladies and gentlemen, please, a nice Mount Carmel welcome for Dr. Lou Cole.
Well, forgive me as I hold the microphone and try and read a little bit here with my challenged vision with this age I'm getting to now. So good afternoon to everyone, and especially our 2019 Red Tornadoes. I'd also like to welcome all the coaches and congratulate all of you for a great season. I'd also like to welcome the families of the players and the cheerleaders for all the sacrifices you've made to allow each and every one of you to be here today. I would like to thank the Rotary, Jose, and everyone involved in inviting me to speak. Before I begin, I would like to thank someone very special to me, my father. He has been instrumental in giving me confidence and tremendous support throughout my life. Although he is 92 years old, he has the mental sharpness, physical strength, and physical energy of someone half his age. I would not be where I am today without all the sacrifices he made and the support he gave me. So I'd like to thank him publicly. Thank you, Dad. It is an honor for me to speak to you today as you begin the next stage of your lives. I was in your position attending this banquet 46 years ago. It is great to be back in Mount Carmel, where it all started for me. Remember, you will always have the distinction of playing for one of the most renowned and successful high school football programs in the country, the Mount Carmel Area Red Tornadoes. During my talk, I hope to inspire you to take advantage of your God-given talents. As I was growing up, I was taught that hard work and discipline were going to be an important part of my life if I was going to achieve my goals. My father taught me this lesson, both with his words and his actions. My father had to leave the state to take a job in New Jersey when I was just born, and he had to stay there to work and support our family for the first 16 years of my life. Despite working grueling hours and a 3-hour commute, my father came home every weekend to be with us. My mother, who is no longer with us, also worked a full-time job as a special education teacher. While my parents worked, I spent a lot of time with my Uncle Saul and my grandmother, who are very dear and special to me. My Uncle Saul would often take me out for walks, uptown, as we used to say back then, to get hamburgers and Philly cheesesteaks. And on those walks, he drilled into me that I should work hard and study to be successful. He would always repeat it like a mantra: work and study and work. Football has always been an important part of my life. As a young child, I was exposed to football through my uncle, Dan Ficca, who played professional football for the New York Jets. My Uncle Dan actually spoke at this banquet a few years ago, probably one of the most famous alumni of Mount Carmel area ever. When I was 8 years old, I had the opportunity to go to a New York Jets football game. After the game, my uncle arranged for me to go into the locker room and meet the players. When he introduced me to Joe Namath, the famous quarterback of the Jets, I was speechless. Since I wasn't speaking, Joe Namath asked me if I wanted his autograph. After a long period of silence, I guess he got bored, and finally I nodded my head yes, and he gave me his autograph. Then he said to me and asked me if I was going to play football when I grew up. Still unable to speak, back to the nodding of the head again. I nodded my head yes, and that ended our conversation. But that experience really fueled my desire to play football. When I began high school, my uncle's mantra of work and study and work came in handy as academics and sports became more challenging. I always made time for studying and training for football. With hard work and a disciplined training program, as well as the guidance from my father, who was one of the first athletes in the area to be an avid weightlifter, I was able to bench 400 pounds as a junior in high school, which was a national record at the time, only to be broken by my brother. Okay. I also worked hard to increase my speed and agility by doing drills in the off-season that were given to me by our great coaches. When I wasn't training, I studied and worked hard to make the honor roll. During these times, I always heard in the back of my mind, work and study and work. The first college to recruit me to play football was Princeton. They arranged for me to visit the campus and spend a weekend there. During that visit, I was staying with some Princeton football players who were hosting me. When we started talking, they asked me what my father did for a living. And I told them he was a butcher. They didn't believe that, and they told me to stop joking around. They said, what supermarket chain does he own? Or what meat packing company does he run? Or what dining club did he eat at when he attended Princeton? When I told them that this was the truth and he was a meat cutter, they began to joke about it. Needless to say, that made me very angry. And I told them if they made one more derogatory word about my father, the Coal Region way, we were going to have to go outside and settle this. Fortunately, it didn't come to that. And they stopped making the demeaning statements about my father. This led me to tell my parents that I did not want to go to any more Ivy League school visits because the students there were too arrogant, and I didn't think I would fit in there at all. Then as the recruiting process went along, I made visits to many Division I schools, including Temple, Maryland, Villanova, University of North Carolina State, Syracuse, and some others. The one thing that was missing from my visits to these schools was any talk about academics or getting an education. Most of the Division I programs were solely focusing on football. While in the recruiting process, I had the opportunity to speak to Gary Hawanik, who attended Mount Carmel Area High School and was actually a student at Brown University at the time, playing football there. Gary said I should visit Brown, another Ivy League school, and he said Brown was different from other Ivy League schools, and he loved it there. I really didn't want to go on the visit, but on the encouragement of my mother, I decided to accept a weekend recruiting trip to Brown. While there, the host discussed academics, stating that going to science labs would be allowed, even if it overlapped football practice. This was a stunning revelation. No one ever said anything like that at any other school. After hearing this and being very impressed with the students I met, the coaches I was introduced to, who didn't base your value on what your parents did or what clubs they belonged to, but on each individual's merit, I could picture myself possibly attending Brown. I did attend Brown and was able to play competitive football and receive a great education. When I began my college career, the work and study, study and work mantra was invaluable. Most of my time was spent either playing football or taking math and science classes. The strain of college football, coupled with the difficulty of an Ivy League pre-med program, really tested my character. Football practice was exhausting, and then after practice, I would trudge to my dorm room and study extremely difficult subjects like calculus, organic chemistry, and physics. Boy, are there nightmares from those. While I was beginning my studies at Brown, I was fortunate to make friends with other students that taught me great study habits, which helped me to improve my academic performance at Brown. Another important concept I learned in college is that the one thing you can control is how hard you work at something. You shouldn't compare yourself to someone else. We are all given a certain set of talents that we can work with and maximize. You cannot control what anyone else does, but if you stay true to yourself and your goals, you will have a much greater chance of succeeding. For example, there may be times that you feel you should be getting more playing time, or that the schoolwork might be just too difficult. But if you continue to work hard, you'll usually be rewarded for it. A saying that my father always preached to me was that the cream always rises to the top. When you begin a job, whatever that job is, you should be the best at that job you can be. Whether it's a sanitation engineer, a teacher, a construction worker, a salesman, a doctor, or a lawyer. You should pride yourself at being the best at whatever you choose to do. You should follow your passion, and when you find something that you love to do, you'll feel like you never worked a day in your life. Speaking of work, I have worked many different jobs during my life. In high school, I worked on the garbage truck with Warren Altimore. You're all familiar with all the years he entertained you as your play-by-play announcer. He was one of my best friends in high school. We had many good times together. I also worked on the beer truck for my grandfather, delivering beer and soda. I worked with mentally handicapped children at Sealands Grove State School. In college, I worked as a bouncer and a bartender during the summers. From each job, I learned something and tried to do each job to the best of my ability. I like to think of a concept I learned along the way that said, you should grade yourself on what you do when no one is watching. Do you look like you're working only when someone is watching? Or do you motivate yourself to do the best even when no one is looking or no one is aware of it? I believe that following that philosophy has served me well over time and has enabled me to achieve most of my goals. Another activity I feel that is very important is giving back to the community. The old saying that doing something for someone else makes you feel better than having something done for you, I found to be very true. One of my favorite activities we did at Brown University as a football team was to visit the local children's hospital. When I saw the smiles on the sick children's faces when we arrived, it was a feeling that was hard to duplicate. Being able to give back to the community and help other people is one of the reasons I became a doctor. I think that giving back is one of the best things you can do, not just for your community, but for your own satisfaction and happiness. Throughout your life, you will be faced with many challenges. Even now, as difficult times arise, I can still hear my uncle's words in the back of my mind, work and study, study and work. In conclusion, I'd like to make sure that you all know that any positive influence in your life can be a great role model. Some people have wonderful families. Some people have great coaches, teachers, neighbors, or friends that serve that function. But whoever inspires you and encourages you can be very instrumental in your success in life. Remember that only you can control how hard you work and study, and that the cream always rises to the top. I would again like to wish you all the best going forward and hope that you succeed at everything you try, even if you have to fail a few times along the way. Good luck to you all, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Louis. I just think that all of you could have learned something today. You could have picked one of 10 different things that Louis taught that we all try to live by at some point in our life. And it was special, Louis. Thank you. I hope they learned. I hope they listened. You can all be where Louis is. Just do the things that Louis just said. Even if you do one of them, it'll help you be successful. Before I go further, on behalf of the Rotary Club, Louis, could you come back up, please? I would like to present this clock that you can put on your mantle somewhere, and remember the day you spoke to Mount Carmel area football team.
Thank you
again, Louis.
Thank you.
Louis.